morning. I'm Eric Smith, Senior Vice President of Sales with Security Card Services. Today we're pleased to present merchant retention. It pays to be persistent. In this webinar, we're going to show you how the conversion process is really an important first impression, how product upgrades are a retention opportunity, and how to build a service team that is your biggest retention asset. Before I introduce you to our in-house expert on merchant conversion and onboarding, I'd like to share a couple just quick housekeeping rules with you. We're going to fill about 25 to 30 minutes of insight and then about 10 to 15 minutes of Q&A. You have the ability to submit your questions through a chat feature. If we don't get to your question during the webinar, we'll follow up with you with the answers via email. And then lastly, the session will be recorded and shared with you via email as well. And now I'd like to introduce to you Janae Mayhew. Janae is our Senior Vice President of Conversions here at Security Card Services. Janae really helps merchant services programs function in a way that takes a proactive approach to retention. So I'm glad she's offered some of her time today and wisdom. Our hope is that you can take what she says today and we'll be able to apply it to your bank and how it approaches merchant services or the potential of your merchant services program. So Janae, without further ado, you want to go ahead and take it away?
Sure. Thanks, Eric. So good afternoon. The first area that we're really going to dive into is the retention premium. So as we all know, retention is important to the success of a merchant service program because of the considerable front-end investment. These items with the investment include people, products, the software tools, service infrastructure, etc. None of those front-end investments will pay off, though, if you can't make your merchants happy and keep them happy over a long period of time. Ultimately, retention is the key that determines the revenue for your portfolio. Even a marginal improvement in retention can double and sometimes even triple your program's revenue.
Hey, Janae, real quick, how does an improvement in retention impact revenue?
You don't want attrition to catch up with growth. So if you're losing merchants at a greater volume than you're signing new merchants, then you will not see the revenue and growth that your bank is looking to achieve.
Gotcha. Thank you.
You're welcome. So retention is the ultimate measure of a program's performance, and this is due to two reasons. High retention shows that most, if not all, gears of your merchant service program are meshing up. So when you think about it, you think about a pie and the pieces of the pie and how they stay together. If you don't have all your pieces, then that program's going to fall apart. This is why SES is so fanatical about customer service. The longer you retain the merchant, the more reliable and profitable the revenue stream is. And basically, the ultimate determinant of your revenue is your merchant staying with you and being happy. High retention means that the program is functioning well. You're doing the right things from an acquisition to conversion to customer care. Each contact that you make with your merchant is a retention opportunity. Very important to remember. Every time you're calling or actually going to see a merchant, that is an opportunity to retain them as a merchant. We commit to using live operators. At SES, we believe retention is really important. And so one of the things that we monitor and we ensure is happening is that calls are not getting abandoned, meaning somebody calls in and they're having to wait and they just hang up. It's very important to monitor this piece to ensure that everybody is getting the responses that they need in a timely manner. So one of the things that you really have to do in order to make sure that your merchant is happy is to use a proactive approach, which is also proactive retention, meaning you're going to keep your merchant happy. And with this, you're ensuring that your customer is aware of their services that they're receiving and everything that it can do. and then you're having to use less of a reactive retention approach, meaning you're not having to react to situations that come up because you're making sure on the front end that your customer is happy.
Hey, Janae, another quick question. Could you talk a little bit more or dive in a little bit more into proactive versus reactive retention? It seems to me that proactive retention is about making sure that the merchant is set up and trained properly.
So you're exactly right. So with a proactive stance, what you look at is getting in front of the merchant, they're signing, they're converting, whatever the situation may be, and you're making sure that they understand their equipment and they understand how to use that virtual terminal that they've signed up for. And then they know all the tools that come with it and how to reach customer support when they need it. Again, you may get to a merchant location and they're processing on a terminal and you find out that a virtual solution may be better for them. So that's your proactive approach of making sure that they're happy and that they're getting the services that they need to have a successful business as well.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. So one thing that we really look at are attrition rates, and our annual merchant attrition rate is right at 12.5%, and that is way below the industry average, which is about 30%. Part of that high-performing retention rate is the ability to tap into the bank's retention advantage. When a merchant services program functions as an extension of the bank, the merchant will see their payment processing as an essential piece of the overall banking relationship, and that's a huge retention opportunity. So proactive retention, retention opportunities, you have to anticipate the service issues that can come from setting up a new merchant due to poor training, onboarding, process breakdowns. They don't understand how the system works, issues like that. And so what my job is to take the reins from the sales team, and once we acquire a new merchant on behalf of a bank partner or enroll a bank partner in general, my primary focus is on a proactive retention through conversion and onboarding. So we use the conversion and onboarding and product upgrades as well as a key proactive retention opportunity with the merchant.
Hey, Janae, can you talk a little bit more about what makes those retention opportunities?
Sure, absolutely. So getting in front of a merchant, asking them questions, giving them the ability to ask you questions, and seeing what's going to work best for them, those are all the opportunities that I'm speaking about.
Gotcha. Thank you.
You're welcome. So when you take a look at milestones as retention opportunities, then you can fully understand the value of merchant retention. You can be more hands-on and nurturing, and that's what we do with an on-site conversion or just an equipment installation. It's best to view any reason to get in front of the merchant in person as a retention opportunity because it's a great customer relationship opportunity. Also, payment processing has changed so much over the years. It's really a technology-driven and complex world, and the equipment that they're getting is more powerful and can do much more now than just swipe a card. It's too risky just to simply mail the merchant equipment with the installation instructions and a toll-free number because too many processors do operate that way. And what we found is that puts the merchant in a very bad spot. So it's not like assembling a piece of furniture. We've learned that over the time and during the different conversions that we've worked, that it's best to get right in front of the merchant. When we work with a new bank partner to convert merchants off of a prior platform, so they're moving from one processor to another, we'll notice that they've either been poorly trained or the original equipment is the wrong product for the merchant. So during the onboarding process, we can identify opportunities for the merchant and also for the bank, and it does make the merchants less likely to leave. talk now a little bit about the hands-on pieces of it. So the on-site conversion is something that you've heard me mention just a little bit. And what we find is that this is ideal for both merchants, bank partners, and for us. What you're doing when you do an on-site conversion is you're actually ensuring that the equipment is installed properly. The merchant has very little interruption to their service, just long enough to settle out the old equipment and install the new equipment. And typically with other processors, we see that these conversions are done over the phone. And as we said earlier, that just doesn't work. You're putting a personal touch on your relationship with your merchant by actually going out there and touching each of them and making sure that everything is installed and working properly.
Hey, Janae, does it help or should the banker be involved in the conversion process?
Absolutely. So anything that gets a banker out in the field and with the merchant is a good thing. We've also seen that kind of FaceTime with the banker can yield cross-selling opportunities for the bank. So maybe there's a product out there that the bank offers that the merchant doesn't currently utilize. Great opportunity to get in front of them and talk to them about that as well.
Great.
So, again, hands-on equipment training for a merchant is really a good thing to do. The equipment, as we've spoken about in the previous slide, it's not just about swiping a card anymore. They work through the internet generally, and you're sometimes going from an older piece of equipment to a new up-to-date terminal, and you need to make sure that your customers understand how to use that and they're comfortable with it, because the last thing you want to do is frustrate them by installing a new piece of equipment. The complexity of the industry is tremendous. And this isn't just about accepting payments. It's a tech industry now. So the hands-on training is important, and the customer care team will not get a lot of calls or complaints or any type of negative feedback from the merchant if that merchant was trained properly and understands how to use their equipment. And this whole process may seem time-consuming and costly, but in the end, it puts less strain on them and also on the bank partners and the merchant. Another approach to the proactive retention or product upgrades, and they're also a very good retention tool. So it's common to see product upgrades as a hassle, but we prefer to see them more as an opportunity. Something that we've just recently done is the EMV upgrade. So we had merchants going from a non-EMV capable terminal that needed a new device that was EMV capable. And so that was an opportunity for bank partners, for sales reps, for the customer support team to really talk to merchants, make sure that they understood the EMV process, because there were a lot of people out there that didn't fully understand what EMV was and how it would impact their business. And so we took this as an area where we could actually talk to the merchants. Our bank partners used this to communicate with them and to build that relationship just a little bit more to make sure that they understood everything. So being hands-on in the conversion and these, equipment upgrades, it's a great way to ensure that everything is running smoothly. Again, another training experience. It helps the merchant know everything, the ins and outs of what's going on with their relationship, and it can immensely increase that loyalty that your merchant has with the bank.
Janae, can you, I know you mentioned EMV, but can you dive into that a little bit and talk a little bit about our process for EMV?
Sure, absolutely. So when we were doing our EMV process, we did a couple of different things. One, we provided reporting to our bank partners, which we thought was very important. And what we did is we took merchant lists and we broke them down by your high-risk merchants to your to your low-risk merchants. So they would know which merchants really needed to be touched first when it came to the whole EMV upgrade process. We worked with our bank partners to find a plan that worked best for them to approach their merchants. So whether it was us reaching out to merchants or the bank partner directly, we had all of that worked out between us and the banks. And then we created additional tools to help with the process, like our EMV upgrade website, where our bank partners could actually refer their merchants to, and they could just simply go on there and order their equipment online, and then we could help with the installations from there. Some of our bank partners chose to do a hands-on approach and use it as an opportunity just to get in front of their merchants, just like if it was a conversion. And then we did the same thing with our sales teams. We would send them out to the locations where it was agreed upon to have somebody go out and do face-to-face visits. And we found it worked very well. It was a great communication tool with the merchants, like I said, and we were able to keep the banks as well as our team at SES up to date on what was going on with those upgrades.
Great, thank you.
You are most welcome. So let's talk a little bit now about a reactive retention through customer care. So customer care is very important, and it's definitely a driver of retention. You know, like we talked about, the payment world is complex. There are opportunities out there where you can find your reactive retention becoming much more focused. There's efforts that your customer care team can do to help with your retention rates as well. So you won't see so many user error calls into your service center if your merchant is trained upfront correctly. And what that does is that keeps your team from being overwhelmed, and our teams as well, and to be able to focus on solving problems with an urgent response and really digging into those problems that come about to see what's going on. You know, there's no way to eliminate all of the problems that are going to come up. And we understand that, and I think most of our bank partners do as well. But there's a lot of processors that struggle with the payment product as the technology becomes more complex. You know, there's more bells and whistles that you have to worry about, and our job is to make sure that if something does occur, that we're able to react quickly and make sure that everything runs smoothly for the merchant once we've addressed it. When a merchant actually calls our customer care team with a service problem, as far as they're concerned, we're their bank, and so we want to represent ourselves well with each of those calls. And something else that you'll find with our support team is that they're always going to have a live system or a live person. We don't use an IVR system. They're going to reach a live person who will handle their call appropriately.
Janae, I think this is really important because banks are trusting their merchant services provider with customers that, you know, most likely has 3 or 4 other business products from the bank wrapped up in them. So there's a lot of valuable relationships here at risk when those merchants are calling in.
That's absolutely correct. You're maintaining a very large relationship with each of those calls, but you're correct. So let's talk just a little bit more about the customer care, the right experience. So when you call in anywhere and think about your own personal experiences when you're calling in for support, sometimes those phone calls can be really confusing. And so we want to make sure when somebody calls into our call center that they aren't confused. They understand what's going on and they're giving the correct information. So the importance to us of answering the phone with just within a few rings and with a live person and keeping those abandonment rates down it's just a necessity. You can't retain your merchants if you aren't accessible to them. It's very important. And then the next piece of that is making sure you have the right people answering the phones and on the other end. So we we really have to watch and make sure that the team members that we have listen well to the merchants, and they think critically, and they're really thinking about everything that could possibly be an issue or become an issue for a merchant. And so they have to be able to solve problems. The role of a customer service team member is the most important role in our company. You know, they have to know the industry, and they have to be able to problem solve and think quickly. And when they need additional assistance, they have to be able to call and get additional assistance with tech support. And we're seeing with other processors, they're cutting corners because the industry doesn't value customer service teams like they should. And the truth is, this role is no longer a $10 to $12 an hour job. You know, the products are much too complex for that. And you have to make sure that the people are willing to go the extra mile to make sure that that merchant is taken care of. We don't, with our customer service team, we do monitor their calls, but we don't monitor their calls for how long they're on the phone. What we're looking at is to make sure that that merchant received what they needed. So if the call takes 5 minutes, that's fine, but if it takes an hour and 20 minutes, that's what it took. So with our customer care department, we really like to take the opportunity to check for efficiencies. So you want to make sure that the small day-to-day tasks are done efficiently, so that way there's more time to really focus on more complicated issues that are coming about. The use of technology that's available to your customer care team to access with the merchant information is a must. They have to have this information so that they can solve problems. They need access to all the right tools, and that's very important. You know, to maintain a healthy relationship and to be able to provide that service, that quality service that your merchant needs, is very important with your retention. Banks and merchant services teams should embrace the same service philosophy. It's very, very important. When your merchant calls into our customer care team, we want them to receive the same service that they're getting from their bank, because that's a really valuable relationship. And we want to make sure that this is all done properly and that it's documented for reporting back to our bank partners as well.
Janae, that's interesting. You mentioned reporting. Can you tell us a little bit about how data can be shared?
Sure, absolutely. So we use a CRM tool called SourcePoint, and SourcePoint is an internal system as well as an external system that we allow our bank partners access to. So every merchant is set up in this SourcePoint CRM, and with each communication that occurs between a merchant or a bank partner regarding a merchant, it's recorded in what we refer to as a ticketing system. What that ticketing system allows us to do is actually pull data into a report to share it with our bank partners on a regular basis, and also gives them access right at their fingertips to view the data. We also have notifications that are set up within that system so that if a ticket is created, they say, okay, if you create a ticket, we want John Smith at our branch to receive a notification, and with every ticket that's open, he would receive a notification. So it's very important that what we see, the bank sees as well, so that way it's an open line of communication and everybody is on the same level of knowledge when it comes to that merchant. So the customer care and the merchant interactions, like I said, they're tracked in that CRM tool. One thing that's really good about that tracking is that when we're looking at new products, we can actually take those calls that come in and we can use those as a way to determine what new products we're going to look at. What are we going to offer to our bank partners for their merchants? We use different ways of classifying the items that come in. So if it's a product-related call, we can go back, 2 weeks later, and we can say, okay, I want to look at all of the product-related activity for the past 6 months and see what tool do we need to start offering. And that's how we actually make those determinations right there. It helps with the satisfaction altogether with the merchant.
Janae, that product development, that's a really interesting point about making sure that information is getting to the product and technology teams.
Absolutely, it really is. And so, being able to port that information over to them, it gives them insights into the habits and the needs of the merchant. And then, in turn, we can offer valuable payment products for them as well.
Great, thank you.
You're most welcome.
Well, that was the last slide. A couple things that I just wanted to chime in with before we get to the questions. As bankers, you guys are looking at your merchant portfolios and you're looking at attrition, you're measuring attrition, make sure you're looking at controlled attrition versus uncontrolled attrition. Make sure those tracking mechanisms are put in place. Controlled attrition, merchant wants to leave because of service, because of pricing, because of technology. Uncontrolled attrition, merchant goes out of business. Merchant decides to cease taking cards. Make sure that you segment that attrition down to those different categories so you really know what to focus on. And one last point I wanted to make is Janae, when she talked about training on the front end, product training for proactive retention, another piece is interchange management. Many times we see new merchants coming in, they weren't not only properly trained on product, but they weren't properly trained on interchange management. What type of information are they collecting from their customers at point of sale? Are they getting the right information to have access to the lowest interchange levels that Visa, MasterCard, Discover, and Amex offer? So just a couple different pieces there that I wanted to throw in. And without further ado, I'm going to get to the questions. And the first question is to Janae, how does your customer care team measure the quality of a solution? Is it whether the merchant calls back with the same problem?
Well, it's actually done a couple of different ways. So, if they call back in, then you definitely know that the solution didn't fix whatever the issue was. So, yes, through that we can do it. We also can do it through monitoring communications with the merchants as well, whether it's the phone calls, the emails, whatever it might be. So there's a number of different ways that we look at that, but definitely if you have a merchant that's called in more than 1 or 2 times with the same issue, then you definitely need to go back to the drawing board on that one and address it.
Great. Okay. Next question, another good one. Are you saying don't track call times, or are you saying track them but don't reward or incentivize the customer care team based on call times only? So
we track call times, but we don't track them for you were on the phone for 5 minutes and you should have only been on the phone for 2 minutes. What we track them for is to ensure that the quality of the call is where it needs to be. You don't want to rush the merchant off the phone. If you don't have the solution, you want to get the solution, and you want to keep that merchant on the phone to make sure that they're satisfied and they get all the information they need. So I don't have a call queue sitting up that I'm watching and saying, okay, it's you've been on the phone 10 minutes, you should have been on the phone for 5 minutes. What I'm looking at is the quality of the overall call and not the time that the customer care representative was on the phone with them.
Got it. Interesting. Okay. Next question. Do your sales reps also handle product install during the conversion process, or are those 2 different roles with different people?
So we send our conversion team, which sometimes is made up of sales reps from that area, into each merchant location. They would go over all the different documents that they have with them, and they would also install and train the merchant on the equipment, as well as the merchant reporting tools and, of course, PCI, which is also very important. So, yes, they are actually in the locations doing those installs.
Gotcha. Okay. Another one, here's a good one. What's the most common problem a merchant will call your customer care team?
That is a really good question. So commonly, merchants will call in because of communication issues with their terminals, which generally is a phone carrier situation or an internet situation. They'll have questions about specific batches, and a lot of times it's just an additional training opportunity with the merchant. But I would say the majority of the calls are going to be terminal-related calls, and again, generally it could be a setting they need to update, all the way down to a communication problem, or just an additional training opportunity.
Okay. And got time for one more here. Your retention rate is really good. Have you done any kind of reporting or analysis on reasons that merchants leave your bank programs? And if so, have you compared those reasons to reporting from other merchant services providers?
Absolutely. So what we do, every quarter we actually complete reporting by each of the different bank partners, and we go over that reporting with them as well. And we get an idea of why a merchant has left. You have your businesses that close or your merchants that stop taking credit cards as a form of payment because it's just not of value to them. And a lot of times what's happening is, they'll switch to a different provider not knowing all the things that fall behind that. They come in there and a lot of times we find that they hear a lot of stories to get them to switch to a different provider. But there's different reasons. It's not one specific area of why a merchant is leaving, and generally it's not service related, which is always a plus. You want to make sure that your service is key, and we do not see service related closings very often.
Great. And one little add on to that retention is, these are bank customers, so to the bankers out there on the call, always remember that there's a loyalty factor there. These customers are loyal to their bank. They'd rather go through their bank for credit card processing than the person that walked in the front door. Thank you, everybody, for joining the call today. Really appreciate it, and thank you, Janae.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.